I believe this right here could quite possibly be the darkest scene in all of Zelda's history. Not because of the dark imagery, Zelda has had dark themes in the past many times before. This is nothing new. What I'm focusing on is the chilling implications of what exactly is going on here. To understand the trailer, we must first understand two things. Why is Malice still around after the defeat of Ganon, and what even is it? I believe these two questions are the key to understanding the true horror of Gannondorf's fate. Let's look at some examples of Malice to try to figure out what it is exactly. Many believe it's a manifestation of Gannondorf's power. While this is kind of correct, there is much more to it. From my understanding, Malice is a raw, negative power, some of which was created by Demise's hatred. In the direct English translation from the Japanese, Demise even says, "This hatred and malice." I think it's safe to say the malice from Breath of the Wild is the same thing as the malice mentioned in Demise's curse. Fun fact, the Japanese word for malice is onin. This can also be translated to grudge. This is particularly interesting because in Japanese folklore, the Rekkan, basically the soul, can be turned into an evil spirit or yuri when the person dies. This happens when the person is influenced by a cocktail of negative emotions, which can all be summed up to the word onin. This is the fuel that powers the evil spirit. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the inspiration for Demise's curse. Just like an evil spirit, his hatred lives on even after his death.
Like a soul who doesn't know Jesus floating without purpose.
Okay, so let's look at some more examples. Malice in Breath of the Wild seems at its most dangerous when it's corrupting a vessel. It's almost like that's its purpose. That's why when you find random clumps of it scattered around Hyrule, it's just formless toxic sludge without a host. This also helps explain the title Blight Ganon and Calamity Ganon's title Scourge of Hyrule Castle. Blight can mean a plant disease, which in itself is very fitting, but let's put that definition to the side. The other definition of blight is a thing that spoils or damages something. Let's look at some of the synonyms. What really stood out to me were scourge, curse, plague, menace, evil, calamity, contamination, and cancer. This matches up very well with what we see in Breath of the Wild. Okay, so far we understand Malice as some sort of evil, corrupting plague. So powerful in fact that it even has the ability to corrupt spirits, like it did Nidra. It's also possible that the Bylosite from Skyward Sword used Malice to corrupt Levis. I came to this conclusion because of this quote from Alwyn. "And his eyes, they were full of malice. People change, or old, wizened creatures change rather. Perhaps it's more than that. He is possessed by something. That's how it felt to me." You can also see what looks like balls of malice in the Hyrule Historia artwork. Okay, we're starting to get an idea of what Malice is. Let's look at some more examples. Some think Malice was a new entity created in Breath of the Wild. However, it has made appearances in other Zelda titles. In Skyward Sword, you can find evil crystals with the description, "a chunk of pure crystallized monster malice," often obtained from monsters who possess the power to curse. Because of Skyward Sword's placement in the timeline, we can conclude that Malice existed long before Ganon and the Kingdom of Hyrule. What's interesting is the phrasing monster malice. It's almost like the ability to produce this is not only relegated to Demise and his curse. This is correct. One of the 3 enemies that can drop this item is given this description by Fi. Curse Bokoblin. This horrifying bokoblin reanimates after death. Analysis indicates it fears pure, shiny items and will startle at the sight of a sacred shield. It is able to reanimate purely through its hatred of this world and its attachment to outlandish underpants. Then, in the very same dungeon we find the cursed bokoblins, we find the boss Kolotos. I'd like to take a minute to point out his many similarities to the Blight Ganons and Guardians. If we look at the Japanese name for Kolotos, it's these characters. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I ain't gonna try that. Which means in English, demon tainted sacred instrument. So basically, Kolotos is a golem that has been corrupted by Girahim's demonic energy. And we also know one of his abilities is to summon cursed bokoblins, which are more or less confirmed to be powered by Malice. I'm going to give one last example of Malice. In Twilight Princess, Aru says this to Link when talking about the Arbiter's Ground. Note, what I'll be reading is the direct Japanese translation. However, I'll have the English version of the game playing on the screen. The desert which was separated from the world, left behind at the place was the mirror and the grudge of the deceased. This desert, at world's end, it still holds the cursed mirror and the malice of the doomed inmates. Malice is not just Demise's curse, but a negative emotional energy that can be created by any creature, or at the very least any monster. There's even more examples of Malice in other Zelda titles. However, for the sake of time, I'm going to have to leave them out. However, I will link some awesome posts compiling examples of Malice in the description if you want to do some digging for yourself. So, what makes Breath of the Wild different from other Zelda games? If Malice has been around since the beginning, why haven't we seen a Calamity Ganon before? I believe this has to do with Ganondorf's nature and his place as the Demon King. But before I can even get into that, I need to add a disclaimer. These are my opinions on the Hyrule Encyclopedia and the Hyrule Historia, and if they're canon or not. These books are very controversial in the Zelda community. I personally accept the Hyrule Historia as canon. However, information from the Hyrule Encyclopedia can be very dubious at times. You can tell that the writers take many creative liberties and even downright contradict what is seen in the games at times. Because of this, I don't consider all of its content canon. That, however, doesn't mean it should be thrown out entirely. My rule for the Hyrule Encyclopedia is whatever doesn't contradict the events or story in the game and have additional in-game evidence to support their claim is fair game. Okay, with that out of the way, I'm going to lightly touch upon the difference between demons and evil monsters. In the Hyrule Encyclopedia, a distinction is made between monsters and demon. Here's a quote: "For all the good created by the goddess, there also exists a great darkness. Demons, born from the source of all evil, and monsters under the influence of dark magic, sow turmoil and bring destruction in Hyrule and its parallel worlds." There's many examples of monsters becoming more active because of the influence of dark magic. Okay, everything seems to check out there, so let's continue with the quote. "Beyond those who willfully serve evil or monsters corrupted by it. These may be animals, plants, or even inorganic objects manipulated in some way by darkness." In some eras, the term demon and monster have been used interchangeably, but in general, demons command and create evil while monsters do their bidding. This seems to match up pretty well with what we've seen in the game. Considering its properties, I think dark magic can be easily equated to malice. I believe malice is the dark power demons use to corrupt, control, and create monsters. So demons are like commanders and monsters are like pawns. I would like to point out the demon Bataro from Skyward Sword, also known as Uncle Bats, can be purified by gratitude crystals. I think gratitude crystals are a good version of evil crystals, gratitude being an antonym of malice. The reason why Bataro was purified by the gratitude crystals is because they neutralize all the malice within him. Okay, we can finally get back to the reason why Calamity Ganon hasn't made an appearance before. My theory to explain this is, in all other Zelda games, Malice resides in Gannondorf, and he has direct control over it, giving him the ability to control his armies of monsters and his ability to curse and use dark magic. If Gannondorf is in direct control, why would he just plop random mounds of raw evil energy all around Hyrule? And why would he have the Guardians just wander around aimlessly? This just doesn't add up. I don't think he's in control. Maybe he had some sort of influence on the Malice initially, but it seems like he doesn't have any control anymore. That's why Calamity is considered primal. It's a storm of evil energy without a master, lashing out. Something must be stopping Gannondorf from controlling his power, his malice in Breath of the Wild. I believe this is what led to the creation of Calamity Ganon. When looking into Calamity Ganon, I found this in the Hyrule Compendium. the source of all darkness that has appeared time and time again throughout Hyrule's history. It's been called many names, from Great King of Evil to Calamity. Hibernating within a cocoon, it attempted to regenerate a physical form after Link awoke, but was forced to confront him in an incomplete state. This is a motherlode of information. This Ganon has an incomplete body and was attempting to create a new one. So basically, the Calamity Scourge form we fought is some sort of incomplete body. But wait, how can Ganon not have a body? This is where we have to separate Ganon from Gannondorf. While the English translation is confusing, I'll get to that later. The Japanese translation from when Zelda speaks about Dark Beast Ganon is this. Ganon, an incarnation of hatred and malice, born in the distant ancient past. Even though he has been destroyed many times, he repeatedly resurrects. I believe it's possible for Ganon to actually be the manifestation of Demise's hatred, while Gannondorf is the person. This would make sense with the title of the final boss in Breath of the Wild, Dark Beast Ganon, Hatred and Malice Incarnate. Think of Gannondorf as the wielder of malice, much like Link is the wielder of the Master Sword. In the series, the Master Sword has its own will, and I believe so does Malice. Dark Beast Ganon being the ultimate example of what Malice desires. When Gannondorf turns into beast form Ganon, he normally has little or no control. He becomes more mindless and loses his normal elegance. This is because he either lost control or given temporary control to his malice. It would also help explain the name of the 4 Blight Ganons. They're all called Ganon because they're all manifestations of Demise's curse. This also means it's possible that the Ganon we fought at Hyrule Castle was just another puppet, like the Blight Ganons, just much more powerful. If you really think about it, Scourge Ganon is more or less just all of the other 4 Blights mixed together. This is all I have for part 1, but I'll promise you that this is just the beginning, and part 2 is when it's going to really get crazy. So please stick around for whenever I post that. Y'all better hold on to your breath, because things are about to get wild.